Hi everyone, this is Jen from Jen Yang Metamorphosis.
Hi, this is Monifa. I'm a voice confidence coach.
So I'm just so happy to actually invite Monifa to join me in this, newly born project, I'm gonna call it. It's the Authenticity Project. And so to be honest, like authenticity has been one of the most juicy um, divine lesson I have been on. I don't know since when, but I just feel like this days and age, we are just trying so hard to understand, like, yeah, what's in our heart? We want to get into our alignment and what is authenticity? And sometimes authenticity has been overly used. You agree, Monifa?
Yes. Yes. I feel like before we really knew what the word meant, we were using it for everything. Uh, and then, then we had to actually learn what it meant because we decided to use it for everything.
And I remember one thing is that, we met, I think last year, I don't remember what month, but my dear friend, Sarah Van Skyver's community,
Yes.
she put him on spotlight. I was just like, this lady is, I was immediately drawn to your energy, Monifa. I was like, that is authenticity. I felt that. So
Yeah.
just want to
Always
put it
warms
out
my
there.
heart.
Just want to put
Yeah.
it out here to such an honor to invite you to just be my guest and really diving together with me to understand more about how we're going to cultivate authenticity and why authenticity is so important. Yeah, I mean the word itself has been overly used, but what is the essence of it? This is something I would love, love, love to talk with you.
Yes. I think it is so important because I think before we started using the word so much, we kept thinking that authenticity meant just being ourselves, but then we realized we don't really know who we are, right? And what does it mean to be yourself, right? And um, it made us do a deep dive into getting to know who we are on a deeper level, right? So it's not just about how do I show you authenticity, but how do I recognize authenticity in myself and my actions, right? And I think that's why, because we were so outwardly focused before that, that we thought that it meant you looked a certain way, and that
Mm,
you, if you were authentically looking, doing the things that you looked like,
yeah.
then we could call you authentic. And then we realized, wait, that's not necessarily true, because just because we look a certain way doesn't mean that that's who we really are, you know?
Wow. Do you know, because I am a very organic person, so whatever that flies into my head, I'm just going to kind of allow it to voice out, okay?
Yes.
So since we're talking about authenticity, we need to talk about why we're afraid of owning this energy. It's an energy. I mean, it
Mm.
feels like an energetic expression. Um, because, well, I would have to say in my culture, it's Asian culture, we feel the need to fit in. We feel the need to just kind of like being, which is compliant to the society, and the need to blend. So when you are out of that kind of atmosphere, you get sort of outcasted, you're ostracized. So I don't know
Yeah.
about your side of the story, but I would love to know more about
Yeah.
when you why sometimes authenticity is, we want to experience that, but yet there is fear coming up, when we are embracing that.
Yes. I think it's very scary to be authentic because of that. We
Mm,
forget, now in the modern world where we're kind of taught to follow our own career path or life path or whatever, that we are dependent
mm,
in some way, shape, or form on our society, on our community, on our families. And especially when you first come into the world, because when you're a kid and you're or a baby, I should say, then really like your living depends upon the family liking you enough to keep you alive, right? So so
Yes.
that's why we have the cute faces and the big eyes, right? Because we're like, feed me,
Yeah.
like it's a part of staying alive. It's a part of survival. And so when we are afraid of being authentic, it's a very natural feeling. It's something that starts when we're kids because it means that we will have a life to live, right? Um, and so when we're moving into our differences and we're taking a chance that we won't have that connection anymore,
Mm.
but you know, I could keep going because what happens is that when we do like find our individual unique qualities, it's not about our family anymore supporting us. It's about
Yes.
finding the community that we are living into. And so it's scary. It's kind of like getting married, right? Where you leave the family and
Mm.
then you create your own, your own circle. And it's the same kind of feeling because when you leave, there's no guarantee, right? That what's the future is going to be stable or more stable than the past, right? But that's so you have to do is you have to kind of take that chance and live into the life that we're supposed to live so that we can find the community we're meant to be a part of.
I have to just share this one thing is that, back in, I don't know, like my early 20s, early 30s, I I've never thought about the word authenticity, to be honest. I thought I was being pretty real, you know, but
Yeah.
not till the point I was like, "Do you know what? Actually, I was using me being real as a strategy to just, kind of like um let all those toxic triggering toxic behavior pouring out of other people and not owning it because I'm real. I don't have to, do anything about it. And it's
Yeah.
really tricky. It's so
Yeah.
tricky till one point, I really have to realize, no, Jen, you know what? Authenticity itself is to be able to look within and see the truth of what's not yours, but you carry on just because you want to fit in so much, or you want to prove to other people that this is, who I am, or, I need to feel the validation. And that's not
Yeah.
authentic. And that's a thing. Yeah, it's a very humbling spiritual path for me to continue to dig into what's authenticity even till today.
Yes.
Even till today, I'm still kind of wondering, like, yeah, did I say that with authenticity, or am I a little bit slightly off? I have to allow myself to see the truth of it.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can so relate because yeah, especially during that time, that age range around 20
Mm,
to 30, because for me it was like if I can't fully be understood, then they wouldn't know who I really am. And so that was a version of authenticity, like, knowing the real me.
right.
Well, so I if I didn't have enough space to show like the fullness of the real me, I just wouldn't say anything. I would just back off completely. And so what that did is it silenced me in a lot of ways because I felt if I couldn't explain something I had to say, then I shouldn't say anything because they might misconstrue it. They might perceive it as something that was not authentic to who I was, right? And so that's another way, like, because it's so interesting. We
So
kind of mirror
interesting.
each other, or like we're very similar in some ways, and we kind of mirror each other in other ways. And I feel like this is one of our mirrors. Like you were sort of performing your
Chameleon.
authentic identity, right?
Right.
So this
Right.
idea of, and then like I was kind of backing off in order
Oh.
to make sure that I was more authentic in what I did represent, right? With my voice. And so I think both of them, like, it's kind of one of those things. Are you looking for the outside validation? It's the same
Mhm,
thing,
mhm,
right? Are we
mhm.
looking for the outside validation to prove our authenticity, right? like, because the proof is never going to be external. The proof has to um, be reinforced from within, right? And so the more we're connected to our own authenticity, for me, I have to explain less, right?
I tend to explain more.
Yeah.
And then I found myself like, oh my God, you're doing the chameleon style again, right? Like, Jen, stop, right? And I have to be like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what have I done? So such a humbling path that we're on. And I have to say, like, because authenticity, part of it is so scary, is because we have to stand up for that, the strange part of ourselves, the weird part of ourselves that people are not used to, because you've been guarding it, because once you show it, people might judge, or people might just backlash on you, and then you're like, I don't want to deal with that, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
that's my case. I'm just talking about
Yeah.
my case. And for example, so within my family, we're a very reserved Asian family, and me, as a very psychic, sensitive, intuitive kid, I've always tried my hardest to manage the psychic spectrum of my life, so I don't overwhelm other people to think like, oh my God, you're so weird, you're so woo woo. But last year, my uncle passed away on my dad's side. So in the funeral ceremony, I literally, I I heard him whisper in my ear and say, Jen, tell everyone I'm fine. That's when he was being cremated. His coffin was being pushed, being cremated. In that moment, I heard that whisper. And I was like, oh my God, you mean now, uncle? He's like, yes, now. I was like, you're not doing this to me. But I still have to have the courage to say, okay, I'm going to be weird. Watch out. So I walk towards the family members, and I have to tell them, yeah, my uncle is fine. So talk to my cousins, my auntie, and of course they're gung ho Christian, right?
Yeah.
So I get stared a lot, right? Like, okay, like, how do you know that? So I feel like very sensitive. I have to protect my heart. At the same time, this awkwardness, like being wobbly, and I have to pour some compassion to this little awkward Jen, because she is not used to this, embracing this part of her. But
Mm.
it's so humbling, because I just feel like I'm on the journey of continuously allowing all pieces of myself to come in as whole, so I don't feel like I'm leaving any piece behind.
Yes, yes. It is because I think we can choose like a specific area to like show, and as long as it's true, then we feel like we're being authentic.
Yes.
But I find this, at least on the spiritual path, that we really do have to learn to incorporate all of the parts of our personality. So even
Yeah.
if I'm in my woo woo space with my woo woo friends, that if I start getting scientific or technical, that I don't try to minimize that either, you
Right.
know? Um, but it's like going the other direction is a lot more faux pas, right? It's more like, don't bring your spirituality in here type
Yeah.
of feeling in some spaces. So so it is, especially like when, again, going back to that family unit who is
Mm,
supposed to be that constant. But if we differentiate ourselves too much, we're putting that at risk,
yes.
and so it's super courageous to like be able to own all of your parts in such an intimate setting, like so beautiful.
Trials and
Yeah.
errors, and readjustment needed.
Oh
and
yes.
and what I realized, my lesson learned is, we can't dictate how other people will view you, or I don't know, the way they feel about the way you show up. It's a matter of how attuned you are with yourself. Am I showing up with that truest part of me, and allowing space to let other people to be themselves? I mean, this is the part I really have being asked to like really hone in, you know, with
Yeah.
gentleness. Like it's okay for people to have reaction toward whatever that I'm saying or showing up, but it's also okay for me to be different.
Yes. Oh, I was just having this conversation because it was kind of this conversation of why um, I wasn't okay with joining in with a comment into a group where
Mm,
it may be considered to be um, argumentative, right?
wow.
Because if I have a different viewpoint than the rest of the group, then talking is disruptive, right? It is, I'm not aligned with the energy present in the group. And so, um, and this is like you kind of think of it, we can think about this two ways because this was presented as a leadership question. Like,
Mm,
um, how do you allow people to have their voice and their say? And then if they're being, if they're causing kind of the antagonistic quality, how do we meet it without, um, basically annihilating them? Like saying you're
yeah.
not allowed to have voice here, right?
Mm,
And so it's this question of, number one is like, is it argumentative or can we just all have our voices heard? Right? If it's out of line of the community, of
mm,
the direction that we're working on or what we're talking about in the community, then it's more of an invitation to join the conversation of the community, right?
right.
But if you already think of it as argumentative, then it's hard to bring a kind of a unity consciousness to it where that we can choose to speak to them in a place of love and a place of acceptance, even with that invitation to come with on this other conversation, right? um, and so to me, it's that kind of question of, am I making a story around the fact that they have a comment
Mm,
about what I have to say? Am I assuming that they don't agree with what I'm saying because they're saying it differently or saying something different? Right? And so it requires this kind of like embracing all things aspect of where we're coming from so that we're not um creating division where none need be created, and we're allowing everybody to have a voice, right?
this is so powerful because we're talking about when we first seeing or being aware of our own inner division, right? And when we see that and how it projects out to the world as, oh, well, I don't feel I'm being accepted here because they're not going to accept me because of this is that, right? Or we
Yeah,
assume, right? I totally can
we do.
resonate 100%. And it's just, um, it brings so much light to this aspect of ourselves and say, wow, you know what? I actually see that division within myself. So
Mhm.
there's an opportunity for me to not project onto others, but open it up and see and with curiosity, like, oh, I wonder what will happen here, you know?
So much so. Yes, and I I specifically remember when I first met and we, hung out with, I guess, my husband,
Yeah.
because he is a very, externalized speaker. And so he would meet anybody on the street, in the store, wherever, and have a conversation with them. And these are people that I would assume my history would make me assume they had no desire to have a conversation with me, right?
Yeah.
Like the store clerk, I'm like, oh, these people are just trying to do their job and get home. They don't want to talk to me. Like they like, it has nothing to do with me, or just maybe even by phenotype. Maybe they just look like a person that wouldn't want to talk to me, right? Um, and he destroyed so many of my assumptions that I started asking myself, like, why am I assuming that people don't want to have a conversation with me?
Mm.
right? And it really blew that open for me in a way that made me say, okay, if I'm going to make an assumption, let me make the opposite assumption, right? Like I'm going to assume that everybody wants to talk to me. So if I have something to say, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And then they can tell me if they want to continue the conversation, right? But yeah, so it really did because I was just so sure that, certain people wouldn't want to have a conversation, you know?
This really brings me to something that's interesting because you said your husband, right? He's
Yeah.
very extroverted, and compared to him, I would consider myself really introverted, you know. So being introverted, and how do we play with the authenticity game? It's also sometimes can be challenging because we have our, mental filter that we sometimes accidentally assume because we're sensitive beings, right? But at the
Yes.
same time, like, that's why we need both extrovert and introvert to mirror each other, and that's why it's beautiful. And you and your husband are doing it on a daily basis.
Yes. Yeah, and I think again, because we feel so much of what people are feeling, we want to respect their feelings,
Right.
right? But then out of respect for their feelings, we might be missing an opportunity to invite them into something different, right?
Mm,
And that's what again I've seen played out through my husband, where he can take somebody who's having a bad day at work and they are have an amazing conversation that makes them, puts them in a more joyful place, right? And so if I'm assuming that they can't get there because they feel a certain way, then I'm getting in the way of other possibilities as well. It's something I've also learned not to do with my clients, that just because they're in a certain place doesn't mean that they can't leave in a better place, right? um,
exactly.
no matter how much it might seem like they need to be in that place, like because of circumstances or whatever, that I can honor them where they are and I can invite them somewhere else as well,
Oh, this one really touched my heart because for my work as well, a lot of times I feel my beloved's are always being critical about, why they're where why they're where they are right now, and then they want to move faster out of the place of where they are. And I just have to say, like, self-compassion and allow ourselves to move and allow that slowest part of ourselves to be willing to budge and wait for that little piece, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Don't leave that piece behind. Yeah.
yeah, because it's so powerful. I think maybe one of the hardest parts of being, holding that space for
Mm,
people is, um, is seeing the beauty of where they are,
yes.
right? And like them wanting to leave it so quickly, but not realizing how much they can take with them and
Yes.
how much power is in where they are, even if it's not where they want to be forever, and so it's kind of that one thing where you're just like kind of trying to really again honor everything that they're in right now, and then just helping them see them more, not necessarily somewhere else, but where they are, um and so yeah, so I can totally relate to that so much.
This reminds me of one thing. Monifa, I know you have a quote for confidence. Do you want to share?
For my confidence quote, I don't even know if I remember it.
Something like it's a combination of knowing what you can expect and like accepting what you cannot control, right? But also
Yeah.
but also appreciate what the present where we are right now.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, it takes those 3 components,
Yeah.
right? So, like, being present to what is,
It's so beautiful.
um, having a sense of what to expect, and being okay, and being accepting what you can't, know, right? I think it is because all those things allow you, one to just, when you get present, it helps you to be available for what is available, right?
Yes.
There's so much abundance and what's already here. And the other parts are like what to expect is just having a sense of like you're part of the life cycle that does not change. Like even if the part that doesn't feel good, if you're in the down part, then you know then that there's some space to have. And then the more you embrace that, the more you get to live into the fun and the excitement of the
Mm,
next part, right? And then really the what was the other part? The other part was, accepting what you can't control, right? So, like,
yeah.
if, if something goes wrong or perceived wrong, then you get to see what else is possible, right? If we can accept that when we realize that it doesn't, what's not expected doesn't mean that it's not good, right? We put these labels on things, and and I think that's the biggest thing. One of the things that somebody told me was if um if you had an unexpected gift, right,
Mm,
then it's a surprise and you'd be happy,
mm,
right? But if we think, the unexpected thing is opposed to our idea of perfection, then we're like, we don't want this here. What is this doing here? And we don't even look at it to see if it could be a present, right? And I think that's one of the things I feel like I learned so much from being in music and performance
yeah.
because um every unexpected moment can be like it can make a whole thing like so memorable, so I have some stories that will be with me all my life because they were unexpected, you know?
Because you know what? This actually leads me to want to ask you about vulnerability because vulnerability, we want to embrace authenticity. It requires us to also embrace vulnerability. And how willing are we to be vulnerable? That's gonna another whole spectrum story, right? So share
Yes.
with us some of your moments. That's like, wow, that's vulnerable, but you feel like you are leaning into that part of yourself, and that's part of how you showed up for yourself authentically.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes back to my voice directly always because
Mm.
it's my biggest point of vulnerability. I think especially nowadays when I'm a lot more well spoken, it's hard to imagine, but for me, speaking is a work in and of itself that it doesn't come naturally,
So hard
you
to
know?
imagine that.
It's yeah, so I am always surprised when I hear it, but it's still true. Like it's one of those things where I have to be present with myself and I have to hold all the parts of myself to have the words available to me to
Mm.
speak because they don't run through my head. I was talking to Jen about this the other day. They don't run through my head like some people. Like kind of always have the internal conversation.
Yes.
For me, I literally 0 unless I put a word in there, it's just empty emptiness. I might, like, have a lot of energy going, then I can pick a thread of consciousness, but in general, it's just emptiness, and so literally every word I speak is something I'm translating from how I feel.
Mm.
So that's, like, the biggest thing for me, like, to me, it's a vulnerability to even show up to speak
Yeah.
because I don't have words until that
Wow.
happens, right? And so, like, my voice work and, like, being a singer was about me being able to be in these major vulnerable situations. Like, one of my early performances, I remember well, it's not just even one, it was like 2 or 3. Can you imagine? Like, I would be on stage and literally, like, the piano would be playing, and it's time for me to enter, and I forgot what song I was singing, much less the notes, much less the all the things you should know if you're on stage to be singing a song. Like, I would forget everything and have to open my mouth and trust my body
Mm.
to show up in what I
Mm.
had rehearsed, right? And, um, and I remember the first time it happening and not knowing what was going to happen, but deciding to open my mouth and do it anyways, and just being blown away that sounds were coming out, and then recognizing, "Oh, wait, like, that I think that's actually right. I think oh my goodness, like, I know what the next part of the song is," and, like, seeing my body show up in that way, like, it was pretty pretty phenomenal, and so that is really kind of my journey, is that I'm constantly in that vulnerable space, so that's why I feel like I can lead people into trusting themselves more in that space, you know? Um, but it's true, like, it requires massive vulnerability to be truly authentic because we're again coming back to that survival state that we tend to be in when we're being vulnerable. And the the truth is that the more we allow that vulnerability in, the more we are inviting the other half of the conversation, right? Like, from the other people, from ourselves, from our, like, our even our more wise selves to show up and to, support whatever is being created in that moment, you know?
Thank you so much for sharing that because for some reason, when you're saying you're feeling vulnerable in that moment of unknown, it's a moment of unknown, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
being somehow okay with the unknown and let whatever wants to come out, that is so vulnerable. And it's, I have to say, authenticity is a practice, you know, and then that for you to show up in the moment by moment by moment by moment without knowing exactly what's going to turn out, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
it actually really does open space to invite people to also lean with curiosity, like, what does she here have to share, you know, because it's not pre-scripted, it's not like it's already been sort of um, rehearse in a way. Of course, you practice studying during your day to days, but I'm just saying in this moment, you can't rehearse,
Yeah, you
right?
can't rehearse a true moment, right? You have
You
to be
can't.
present to the one you're in. Like, I literally just sent out an email about this because it changes.
Mm,
I think one of the things that we most make a mistake in is that we're assuming that it's going to be the same as when you rehearsed it, or we're assuming it's going to be the same as yesterday when it
mm,
was perfect,
mm.
right? And the more we try to hold on to that perfection, the more we lose what's available into us in that moment. And so if something changes, then everything goes crazy, right? But if we're open to and to the possibilities, which requires a level of vulnerability, then we're okay with what has changed and we're being present to what is, right? We're able to see what is coming through, what is going to meet the moment, and what does want to show up, right? And so we can let go of what we assumed was going to happen and like really get to be present and honor the moment and then the energies of that moment. And if you're honoring the energy of the moment, you're honoring the people that are receiving the energy, right? Like that's how we can show up in a place of authentic service as well.
See, I'm chewing on your words right now. Profound. So, like I say, authenticity requires vulnerability. At the same time, it requires us to detach from those uh, pre-assumptions or the need to to control, right? So literally, it reflects back to what you just said in the confidence quote, right? Like
Yeah.
accepting what you cannot control rather than
Yes.
saying this is the way I'm showing up in a certain way, certain form in order to show my confidence. It's completely different.
Yes.
Completely
Yes.
different.
It's completely different, and and I think sometimes we assume that means that we have nothing to hold on to, but we always do, and I think that, all the gurus say it, right? Like, so the one thing you get to hold on to is love. Like, you always available, right? In the outcome, even if we are having two conversational threads that may not be aligned, right?
Yeah.
Like, we
Yeah.
can still speak out of love and meet the moment with love, right? So no matter what's going wrong, you can have a desire of the outcome that will serve everybody,
Mm.
in the sphere. And so you don't have to worry that nothing will happen, right? You don't, because something will happen because you're there. And honestly, like, I think we forget we are love. Our awareness, our intention, our beingness is love, you know? So we don't have to find it, we can be it. And it's just a matter of trusting that we are.
And we
Yeah.
have to trust that we are in the co-creation process, right? Because when we don't trust, then we are basically rejecting the co-creative process that we're going through. So
Mm.
allowing this trust piece to be with the vulnerability, that's something that I learned too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, again, a deep trust is required, so again, it's hard to imagine not having it at this point, because I know what happens to me when I don't have it. And again, just to show up even to life each day requires a level of trust for me,
Sure.
because the externals are always requesting that of me, right?
Right.
um and but yeah, that deep level of trust, like of really leaning on what's already available.
Mm.
It always boggles my mind, because I think of how much we think we have to control, and like we're always here controlling, like I'm going to get this right, I'm going to make this happen, I'm going to, and like the whole earth is under us. Like, it just boggles my mind. Like, we
Yeah.
are not holding ourselves up. There is not there's nothing that you're doing that's gonna make you, stand on the earth longer, except for the earth already being there to support everything that is coming through us on the planet,
Mm. Mm.
And so if you're looking for evidence that something is available, there's a planet underneath our feet. Like, even if we're talking about our sense of like a traditional belief or Christianity, in that vein, like, God gave us a whole planet to
Yeah.
support us in every moment, and to remind us of the support available. And so if we get confused, then that's the first place we need to think to, like, well, I'm not holding myself up right now. Like, what is, right? And what can I lean on in this environment to support me in my efforts,
We have a universe within us. Imagine that,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know me and you were very enthusiastic for also astrology, and we are all those. We're not just a pie chart, but we are the compilation of so many energies, right?
So much,
So
yes.
much, so much. And by being vulnerable to each planet expression in ourselves,
Mm.
that's already healing. That's already healing. And if for every one of us, we're willing to practice authenticity in our own way. I mean, there's no certain way, but I would love to know what's your way to practice authenticity, because we can
Mm.
talk about like vulnerability, trust.
Yeah.
We have so much to talk about, Monifa.
There's so much we
Right?
do. We have a whole
Yeah.
list, right?
Yeah.
Um, I feel like this will encourage a little bit upon one of the other things we were planning on talking about,
Yeah.
because my way of doing it is to
Mm.
look at both what I have accepted in myself and what I have yet to accept,
Mm.
right? Like, what I'm uncomfortable with, that edge is showing me what else is available, you know? And um my willingness to hold both
Mm.
is what allows me to be authentic in any given moment. So, like accepting the fact that I've done this before, like, even coming into this conversation, like accepting that I've done this before, and I don't need, like, 1,000 pages of notes, and I don't need like all of these things that because of what I know of myself before and accepting, right, the fact that I don't know what's going to happen. It's been like a high energy day, so I don't even know if my brain is going to come online all the way. Like part of that is like, you know, I don't, that my unknown and like
Yes.
being okay if both show up, like being okay if I'm fabulous and, star quintessent, and being okay if I literally blink and forget my own name, right?
Yeah.
Which has happened. So like those things are both on the table, right? And then being okay with whatever happens and allow it and not feeling like I have to hide that either. That it's part of who I am. So if it shows up, then maybe this is the day I get to help somebody feel more comfortable in the fact that they don't have words every time they speak. And then if I do represent myself well, then maybe I will get even a part of what I hope people understand to more fully accept themselves out into the world, right? So letting both of those things be true and okay and everything they need to be, you know?
Oh my God, I just love what you just shared. I love, love, love it. It's like a whole holistic way of embracing who you are, right? So even though
Yeah.
authenticity is a word and we are all pondering, oh yeah, if I'm showing up this way, that's I seem authentic or whatnot. But it actually has so much more behind this word, and it's linked to all different elements: the trust, the vulnerability, how willing we're able to embrace both and right.
Yeah.
Are we courageous enough to say, I have no fucking idea what am I doing?
I think it's so valuable because without it, you're only who you've been before,
Yeah, true, very
you
true.
know?
Mm.
And so often we think, well, I have to be my best self, the best version of who I've been before. But we're not allowing for our future best self to show up either,
Yes,
right? And so I think we've got to allow for both sides, you know?
words are so tricky, Monifa.
They are.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, for example, when we're doing marketing or doing just communication in sales, we talk about becoming your best version of who you are. But what is that best, if you are not allowing yourself to leaning into the unknown version of yourself?
Exactly. You can't find the best if you
No.
haven't traversed the unknown, right? Like you
Right.
have to do that in order for the other to happen.
and that re- and that requires courage,
Oh yeah.
vulnerability, trust, all these elements.
Yeah. Yeah. So much so.
So much so. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to just kind of wrap up because it's juicy and I want to save it to the next um, our next conversation.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Of course. Of course. We have so much to discuss.
I know. So what well, Monifa and I, basically, we are having this intention to really promote the idea of embracing authenticity in a deeper level, in your own way, not our way, right? And all we are all born unique. Our unique expression, our unique way of communicating, or however we show up in the world. So we are inviting different thought leaders, speakers, having a conversation with us. And then that way it ripples out to the world. And when they are having conversation about authenticity with other people, let the, I don't know what's that called. That game, solitaire.
Solitaire. Okay.
It's like a solitaire type of energy to ripple this authenticity project out.
Yeah.
So we are allowing ourselves to see the wholeness of who we are, instead of trying to be perfect to, I don't know, to make ourselves seem in a certain way in order to be authentic. But who we are the core of your essence is already enough.
Yes. I just love this idea when you brought it up because it's so powerful. Because also when you get to have the next conversation of authenticity, you get to see how you show up with that
Right.
person and what creates the authenticity of that conversation
Mm.
because with each person brings whole new elements and energies into play. And
Yes.
so it's just so powerful. And then each gets um, to recognize that within themselves and then pass that on to the next
Yes.
person. And I think it's going to be really lovely to see how this develops. I think it's going to be really fun.
I know it'll be really fun. And it's
Yeah,
Aquarius age, by the way. So it's
it so
okay.
is.
It's okay to be a weirdo.
It's okay. It's okay if you're weird, just a little weird like me.
Join us.
Yes. Join us. It's
Join us.
fun.
Yeah. Already, oh my God, I'm feeling my heart is just full with lightness. Because before the conversation, I think I shared with you, oh my God, I just feel a little bit weird in a weird space of sensitivity. But now I just feel like my heart is just full with joy. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Monifa.
You're so welcome. Yes, I was right there with you. There's just a lot to experience, but
Mm,
that's the beauty of what gets to happen, when we are available. And I think it does. When you have somebody that will meet us there, then it makes it that much bigger. And so we have a lot to experience when that happens. But it's also like again the beginning of a powerful ripple effect that I hope
yeah.
really lights up so many people along its path.
So we're putting this out in the ether and we'll see how this is going to take us on to the next whatever that's going to be created.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. And this is beautiful Monifa Harris. And feel free to follow her. And I will provide all her detailed information in the post along with the video. So we will see you soon with more authenticity discovery.
Yes, see you soon.
Bye.